I light the piece of paper on fire and it immediately burns directly through my wire, and the whole thing I set up fell down. All right, people, let's get into it. I am Garrett, and in this video, we're going to be breaking down how I shot the title sequence for this isolation film challenge. If you don't know about the contest, it started on Friday, March 27th. It is running through April 17th. All of the rules, all of the details, all of the prizes, which I think are like up to like $5,000 in gear and prizes that you can win, are up there in that video. So check that out. Now, I obviously am not competing in this, but I wanted to shoot something anyway to kind of show or give an example on things that you could do when thinking through your title sequences. So this is the title sequence that we're going to be breaking down. There are 3 scenes in that title sequence. I filmed them over the course of 3 days, 1 setup per day. The first day I filmed the fire sequence, which was in my garage. The second day was the crime scene sequence, which I filmed in my bathroom. And then the third sequence was the blueprints and the close-ups on photographs and all that kind of stuff, which was filmed on this table here. Before I shot a single frame, the first thing I knew I needed to do was to find the right song to cut a title sequence to. That's where the first sponsor for this challenge came in. That's Epidemic Sound. So it was super simple to search through their library, putting in the key searches that I wanted. It didn't take me long at all, and I had the music that I wanted, which sounds like this. I know that you're hearing things, but I'm just sitting here in silence looking like a weirdo. Now that I have my music and I knew the genre that I wanted to go into, it was then kind of thinking through, what did I have? What did I have access to? Because obviously I'm shooting alone, I'm in my house, I'm not going anywhere, I don't have any talent, I don't have any crew, so what can I do? I really wanted to expand the world to make it believable that there were other people involved when of course there weren't. So I went on a stock photography website and I just searched for mugshots. I took all of those photos, put them into Photoshop, and then I did a half-tone action script on them, which gives them that like newspapery, like dot artwork. I printed off a bunch of these and then I cut them out by hand, which took forever, but we got there. And then I was thinking about what to do with them. And that's where the idea for the fire came in, because we have these criminals, we have these mug shots, and then the idea of eliminating those criminals. The fire seemed to make sense, which, by the way, don't light anything on fire. I have a bucket of water as well as a fire extinguisher. Don't try this at home. So I went to the garage, I set up 2 heavy-duty light stands, and I put this wire between them because I knew I was gonna hang all of these mug shots on this wire. That was gonna give me the look that I wanted. I took 2 2x1 Gemini lights, I laid them on the floor to give me this really nice uplighting. I set them both on fire effect to give this kind of cool flicker to the rest of the room. And I then set up a screen test. So before I did anything else, I took a blank piece of paper, put it amongst all of the mug shots, and I lit it on fire. And I did it for 2 reasons. The first is fire tends to be really, really bright. And I wanted to make sure that my camera's exposure was set, that the fire wasn't gonna just completely blow out my image. And I then wouldn't have to ruin one of the mug shots that I spent forever cutting out. So I'm set up for the screen test and I light the piece of paper on fire and it immediately burns directly through my wire, and the whole thing I set up fell down. Fortunately, I had heavier duty wire. I had 10-pound wire, which I then strung up in its place. And I did a second screen test with the new wire and everything worked beautifully. Because this is a super simple setup, I knew that the camera movement was going to be super important. So I used this slider. I put this head on there, but this slider is awesome because it moves like this. But the best part about this is that there is this built-in tension. Like it has this resistance to it, which really helps you keep shots super smooth. And then I used the Canon 70-200 and varying focal lengths. If you know anything about lens distortions, I wanted the background and the foreground to be really compressed and close together, but the background would still be super, super blurry. So I filmed everything at either 1.8 or 2.8, depending on the shot that I was doing, because we were in a low light environment and I wanted a super, super shallow depth of field. And that was that whole setup. I then just took the tripod around and set it up in varying heights at varying angles. I moved the slider on different axes for the final shot, which is hands down my favorite shot. It's where we see all of the mugshots burning at the same time. I traded out the telephoto lens for the wide angle lens, which is this one. It's the Canon 16-35. I set it super, super wide, but because it was so wide, my depth of field was much, much longer. So I flagged off those Gemini lights that were on the floor just so that they would catch the photographs, but not the wall behind, because while our focus was going to be really deep and I would see that clearly, if I could just make it super dark, the focus would stay on these photographs that were in the foreground. The second setup is the crime scene. I didn't want everything to look the same or to feel the same, and because we had this really orangey red fire sequence, I wanted to then make this crime scene the opposite. I wanted to go really deep dark blue with it, giving it the appearance that we're expanding the world. We don't want it all to look the same, we don't want it all to feel the same, but we all want it to look like it belongs together. So contrasting our colors, cold and warm, helps to make that feel like they're in different places at different times and make that whole world feel bigger. Downstairs, where we're at the bottom of the staircase, I had a 2x1 Gemini set to this nice blue color. I blasted it up away from where I was filming up into the corner of my entryway, kind of treating it like a book light, just making this really soft wraparound light at the bottom of the stairs. At the top of the stairs on the left, where you can't really see, there's the rest of this landing. I had a 1x1 Gemini light using the emergency light effects. And that's just to contextualize what we're seeing. If we have these red and white and blue flashing lights, it's going to read like there is a situation that involves police officers or emergency vehicles, again, kind of subtly selling that crime scene feeling. On the right side, that stairwell wall is very long and very blank, and I wanted to kind of break up the monotony of that by just kind of creating this sharp line of light. Next to that 1x1 Gemini, I had an Aperture 300D gelled to be blue and barn doored to give kind of a beam of light across the stairwell. I had a final light in the bathroom, which was just another 1x1 with the same blue light as at the bottom of the stairs to just kind of bring everything in together. After that, I just used prop police line tape, which here I got on Amazon. It's not expensive. It's upside down. I already had it laying around from another shoot that I was doing, so I just taped some of that up. We had all these lights set up, but again, no talent. So the camera really needed to carry the weight of storytelling on how we're supposed to feel about this. We've got this cool lighting, we see all of the emergency lights going, it works out really well, but I wanted this to feel like the world was getting turned upside down. And one of the ways that I thought to do that was using the vortex shot, the inception shot, the literally of turning the world upside down. And for that, I used the Weeble S, which is this, which another partner for the contest. If you want to win one of these, you can. There's 2 of them up for grabs. I put the GH5S on here, and then I just walked up and down the stairs with this guy. I had it on a monopod to give it a little bit of extra stability, but that was it. The next shot I filmed was this scene in the bathtub, where it was me laying in the tub. When filming by yourself, especially if you're in front of and behind the camera, it's really hard to check your framing and to check your focus, especially like for this, because I had this telescoping pole, this boom stand that my camera was up above looking down. There was no way for me to look at the little flip out monitor on my camera and be able to see what I was supposed to be doing. And in a tub this small, it was really, really hard to be face down in. man. Like in that shot, my knees are all the way against the end of the tub and like elevated a little bit to kind of like push me back even further. And my head is still kind of already cramped up at the top, like barely in the water. So because of that, I knew that it wasn't gonna like really read like, oh, this person like is no more. Which is then where I got the idea of like, well, what if I just put my hands behind my back in like a really uncomfortable, awkward way that would then kind of help sell with some of this contortion. This is where an external monitor comes into play. Being able to have a monitor off camera that's nearby that you can look at will help you make sure that your framing and your focus is exactly where you want them to be, which is why something like this, which is the Feel World F6 Plus monitor, is important. Again, another thing that you can win, another partner for this. There's another video on what I shot for that. But having a monitor like this, something that you can view the shots, view the focus, see what you're looking at, is literally the only way that you're going to be able to make sure that you get the shots that you want. The final shot I got for that setup was that kind of slow pull where we're going past the evidence markers and we're kind of seeing all of the stuff on the ground. Really cool shot. I loved how that shot turned out. Again, those were just some props that I had laying around. The blood droplets on the ground was just sriracha, not super believable as blood, but in this like super blue lighting, it didn't really matter that much. It was enough to kind of make it work. But for that shot, I used two things. One, of course, is the slider. Again, because I can get so low to the ground that I could do this, if I'm not stupid, do this kind of push or pull. In this case, we did a pull through this and be so close to the ground, which turned out really well. The other thing I used, which you've probably seen a lot online before, is this funky looking lens. This is the Laowa probe lens, but it is this long kind of probe lens here. It's a T14, so it does need a lot of light, but it's a macro lens, which means I think you can get stuff like literally this close to the lens and it's still gonna be in focus, which is absolutely wild. I use this lens because I kind of wanted to pull through all of those evidence markers, but being that low and doing this pull and kind of revealing more of the world as we were seeing through this shot did a really good job at making us feel like we're living inside this crime scene. And that lens brings us to our third setup, which I used that lens exclusively on, which are the blueprints. I was at a garage sale a couple of years ago, and there was an entire box of these blueprints, and they're like hand-drawn from the 50s. That's literal pencil. And they were giving them away. I got the entire box for $25, and my wife, who's a fantastic interior designer, shout out to her, has just been using them as kind of like art detail stuff that kind of are sitting like this. Very cool. But when I think about true crime, my mind goes to that there's like a lot of planning and that there's a lot of strategy and there's like a lot of setup, and that these criminals are not like the people that are turning over liquor stores, but like the ones that are doing some like really crazy stuff. And while the blueprints don't really have anything to do directly with the rest of what I'm doing, it does infer or imply planning and strategy. So I figured that we have kind of this crime scene that happens in a house. We have these criminals that supposedly are the ones responsible for the crime. There would have been planning involved in making that crime happen. So that's where I kind of got to the blueprints, and I had these in my house laying around anyway, so I just taped them to this desk, and I used the probe lens, and I used my slider, and I just kind of slowly worked my way around each of them to get kind of just really interesting shots. At the very end, I tossed this in. Again, one of the many props and things that are just laying around my house. I have this special police. There's one quick little shot where I did like a light pan across just where it says police, again using that same probe lens. For that, I was using the Light Panel's Astra 6X bi-color LED panel. This is hands down one of the brightest LED lights I have ever used, and it is bi-color, which is fantastic and fully dimmable. This is another light that you can win if you want to compete in this contest. But because that light is so bright, I was able to use that as a nice direct key. Because the Laowa lens is so unbelievably light hungry, I could then get all of that textural detail that I wanted. I then took all of that into Premiere Pro, cut it all together with Epidemic Sound's music underneath it, threw some simple text over the top, and we had the title sequence that you saw. And that's it. That's exactly how I went about getting the final product that you guys saw as the example for this contest. I want as many people to compete in this contest as possible. So if you found this helpful, do me a favor, give it a like, share it with some friends. If you haven't subscribed, make sure that you do and hit that bell. And as always, I'll see you in the next episode.